Okay, you're recording, Chair.
Are we recording? Right, well, welcome everybody to this, the last meeting of this council year for the planning committee.
Yeah.
And without further ado, 212293, apologies for absence. To note apologies for absence, we have Rose Dawson. Proposed Steve approved. Second to Rachel, all in favour? Thanks. 212294, disclosures of interest. To receive declarations of interest from councillors on items on the agenda. Anybody? No?
No.
To receive written requests for dispensations? No, none received. 212295, minutes to approve the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday 12th of April 2022, which you've all seen. David proposed. Dale seconded. Are we all in favour?
Yep.
Lois?
I was absent.
You were absent, so one abstention. 212296, public participation. A warm welcome to Councillor Andrew Fenton. If you want to say something at this point, Andrew.
I'm fine, thank you.
You're okay. Right. Otherwise, keep your trap shut, as I said. 212297, any notified planning panels? We haven't, have we? 212298, there is in front of you an updated sheet of the planning decisions. David and Nicola and I met the other day, and it might be an idea if councillors that have looked at these plan applications and they have since been rejected, if they would look at, if they want to know more about it, will they please actually look at it and find out why it has been refused or why it's been granted when it's when we refused it. I will just pick one out, the one at the top, 6 Betfoot Mill. What we've done with it, the wording, what it said. What we're done with it. Sorry about this. Look at it. Yeah, 6 Betfoot Mill, we rejected it, but they granted it. And what it said, and they'd actually added this to the town council's comments, was assessment of the original plans which have been significantly revised. And they've been added to our comments, which is something we didn't say because we didn't know. So you know.
Can I ask for clarification on that, please, Howard? Are you saying that we looked at previous drawings and not the updated drawings?
Well, this is, yeah, which we, as far as I was aware, we looked at the correct drawings, but
We will have looked at the drawings at the time, but there's nothing to stop if the developer wants to replace some of those within those. If, say, conservation say, can you do X, Y or Z, they might revise the drawings, but if we've already seen them...
And already passed our comment? Yeah, that's fine. So in that case, there's no harm or foul on either party?
No.
Okay.
So as I say, if anybody, any council wants to look at why one or the other, that would be good.
No, that number 00528, which is about the fourth one down, 36 Primrose Lane.
Yes,
We voted against that, and yet it was granted. But I went to see that the next day, and that lovely wall that one of the councillors was talking about is on the other side of the driveway. So if you look at the driveway, the house that's been adapted is on the right, and the wall between that property and the next property, which was Highfield House or something other house down Primrose Lane, it's just a common garden Yorkstone wall. The flash wall, which the council was concerned about, is on the left-hand side of the driveway. So it is there, but it's like 10-12 foot away from the affected boundary. So that's just an error of visualisation, I think. So I had no issues with that one being granted.
No. All right, so thanks. 212299 to consider feedback from Bedford Council. Right, well we Nicola wrote to Mark Hutchinson about why these comments have been removed, and I'm going to read it out. Mark's reply. We eventually got it. Dear Nicola, thank you for your email. In short, and to answer your question directly, I can confirm that individual public comments are no longer accessible. By way of background, I would offer the following points. The council had to make the operational decision to remove actual public comments from view for a number of reasons. The main reason was due to the high number of inappropriate comments received that breached the GDPR. We received many comments from people that include personal data and information uploaded directly to the council's public access website, meaning an actual breach of GDPR has occurred. This leaves the council at risk of being fined by the Information Commissioner, as it will be deemed that it is the council that has breached the regulations, not the person who submitted the comments. Such fines run into tens of thousands or more. The Planning Advisory Service, the Planning Office Society and others have advised that in these circumstances the council should remove public comments from view. Other authorities, such as Manchester City Council, have already done so. The council is not legally obliged to publish the comments they receive from members of the public. The government's national planning policy framework is silent on this matter. Notwithstanding the operational changes, all comments received will continue to be summarised in the officer's report for planning applications, and members of the public will be able to offer their specific views for those items that go to the Regulatory and Appeals Committee and the area planning panels. Also, people don't need to register with public access to get confirmation that we've received their comments. If they submit their email address, they will be sent confirmation that their comments were received. In this way, private individuals will continue to represent their own views on development proposals, and as parish town councils are separately consulted, they are also able to make their own particular comments, which can augment the range of representations that may be given by the general public. Nicola also spoke to another planning officer who said that he didn't agree with what had happened, but he wasn't involved with the discussion. So, to go further, just to carry on then from that, Nicola is going to email Julian Jackson, who is the top of the tree, and ask him about his comments, ask him if the council do intend to put them back on, and why has it taken them 4 years to do it? It is 4 years.
Can we put that to a vote if we're going to do that, and can I speak against that proposition before we do that, please?
Well, do you want to speak now then?
Yeah, I actually abstained on that particular motion last month, because I felt that, you know, this may be an unpopular view around the table, but I felt that we should be making a view on planning applications in our own right as individuals, and not being lobbied by comments on the screen. You know, I've been on the planning committee for a couple of years now, and I've heard many times, oh look, there's a comment against it, oh look, that means we've got to vote against it. Well, I've had an issue with that on several occasions, because you're kind of being lobbied by the mass, and which sometimes it's the people that are a minority shout the loudest, as we all know that. So I think point one, we ought to take our own view. Point two, we shouldn't be lobbied, and if someone does want to lobby at us because they have an issue with a proposal which is next door to them and it's in our ward, or they know we're ward councillor for this and the other, they can approach us and we can take a view. We can go and see them, we can be lobbied personally. But then that's very different from taking a spurious comment on the Bradford website. And what they're saying, I think, is that from a GDPR point of view, they're acting as a notice board. So it's not the person who's commenting they have a problem with, because they could remove that data as, you know, where the email comes from. It's the content of the comment where the GDPR leakage comes from, and they can't police that. So I think from a legal point of view, they're probably right. So that's my three views on that subject. So I would vote against that.
David?
Yeah, I think the public comments are an integral part of the decision-making process. If a planning officer at Bradford uses them, distills them, and then presents them to councillors, then there is no reason why we shouldn't see a redacted version with any inappropriate comments. Steve mentions if anybody has a problem with this, they can lobby us directly. Well, sitting on a planning panel, if somebody did lobby you directly over any application, then you would have to declare an interest, and it might be to the point, if you've committed one way or t'other, that it would be a prejudicial interest, because you would have seemed to have predetermined. I think also it allows the public to see what's going on, and if it's around the neighbourhood, and I've come across these before, a little application goes in, nobody knows anything about it, and then all of a sudden there's a furore when somebody actually puts a couple of comments on that, this is going to be a childminders with no parking in the middle of a dense housing estate, and people can then rightly be more aware of the nitty-gritty. I think Bradford are using GDPR, like the police use GDPR, just to be lazy. There's nothing to stop the comments being vetted first and redacted for any personal or any GDPR issues, and then the comment could be put on. It's my view.
Lewis?
I largely agree with Steve around GDPR. So one of mine tonight actually exemplifies that quite well, I think. So one of the properties that I'm going to speak on, I've spoken on before, and the time I spoke on it before, it had personally identifiable information on that comment, and not only is it personally identifiable, it was quite sensitive as well. So it was very clearly a very, very important issue. And having visited that property, I happened to bump into a couple of neighbours, could identify that isn't them. So from that comment alone, I've got a fairly good idea as to exactly which house it is, and that they identified almost, so it makes them vulnerable. And Bradford, as effectively a publisher in this instance, my understanding of GDPR is that they would be liable if anything sort of adverse were to occur as a result of that. In fact, that's outside of GDPR, but inside of GDPR they would as well, would be my understanding. So I understand the points, and in looking at my applications, I do look at the number of objections and the nature of the objections, purely because people who live next door will probably have a sort of very literally as well as metaphorically a different view on it, and I think that has value. But at the same time, I think need to be cautious. And
GDPR, I think, is probably one of the. It could be one of the. We've been promised a great bonfire of European regulation. It is European regulation, is my understanding, and so it is about time it was reviewed. I agree. It's the Bradford Council is acting as a notice board. They do not moderate what goes on until it's pointed out to them. And I've actually said, so I agree with David, I think they're lazy about this. I've pointed out that they had 5 comments that were of a racist nature earlier in the year on their website, and pursued that. I think we should be aware of the comments that are made, actually, by local residents. It doesn't have to be identifiable, and historically I can tell you it was identifiable, so the developer historically need not have been identified, but the individual objecting could be identified. So I don't know where we've got to with that, but I think comments should be available to us.
Rachel?
I agree. I think comments should be available as well. I don't think it necessarily biases people. I mean, it might do for some people, but sometimes I look at comments and I just think, well, that's very NIMBY-ish. Or sometimes I look at it and think, well, that's actually something I hadn't considered,
no.
And perhaps something that I should consider. I take the point about GDPR, and that Bradford Council would be liable and would be infringing on GDPR if there was sensitive information. I think perhaps they should then police it rather than they're getting this sort of, if they're getting comments, they're getting this something that goes with their decision-making tool that is not open and transparent, which I think we should be able to see. And also the point that Steve made about, individual parishioners could come and speak to us and lobby us directly. Well, I think if they've made a comment on the council website, they're probably just not going to think about doing that, and it's an extra faff for them to do. I just don't see that being an effective system myself, and I think this is a good way of us knowing, getting a bit more local intel.
So right then, what I'm going to propose then, that I'm going to propose that we do actually write to Julian Jackson and air our views. I'm proposing that. Do I have a second to David? All those in favour of doing that, please show hands. For, against? The motion is carried. We shall write to Julian Jackson. Whether we'll get anything out of it or not, but I feel like everybody else actually, that I feel quite strongly that these comments should be seen. On the same thing, we were going to, if I would like to propose that we put to full council that we would like this on the next parish council liaison agenda, so that other parish councils comment and see if they feel like us and see if they want to put their weight behind us. So I would like to propose we put to full council. We would like this on the next agenda, the parish council liaison. Do I have a seconder for that, please, David? All those in favour of doing that? Everybody, thank you. You got that right, Nicola? Yeah. And it was also suggested that we write to our MP as well. Do we hang fire on that?
I think the comment from the named planning officer, where the government legislation is silent on that matter, or maybe the government legislation needs to say yes or no. So I think that is a Westminster issue, and we maybe need to take that up with the MP.
So do we need to do that at this stage, or do we hang?
I don't think it would harm.
So you're proposing that we write to the MP?
I'll second that.
All in favour, please show. Thank you.
It would show some clarity, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Like the MP to get some clarity and to see what's what. And finally, there is, well, I call it a planning bible. It's a document that's 401 pages, which has everything in it. Gives all the points, how they decide on planning applications. So at the moment, Nicola is trying to find if we can actually buy a copy of this. So we have a copy of this document. You can access it on the website. Right, if you go onto Bradford Council website, onto the planning bit, you can find it almost straight away. But, David?
Yeah, I've already sent a link to Nicola and some PDFs of the main parts of that strategy, which if we are making decisions, then we actually, in my view, need to give reason and valid planning things. This will allow us to look through and actually start using some of the terminology that Bradford use and accept for our decisions. So maybe, Nicola, you could circulate that link and the PDFs that I've done so far.
Yeah. Because it is all there, because I've had a look, I've saved it. But if we can get a hard copy, which we're trying to do. Nicola found one, but it was London, and it was only 25 quid, so surely Bradford's one is not going to be so expensive to buy. And we actually have it here, and
I don't know, it might be a bit more niche, so more expensive.
I don't know, Rachel. Well, we should. Just trying to find.
It's just not the core strategy either, is it? It's like the shopfront design is one we've used before.
Yeah.
Was that one of the PDFs that you had?
Yes.
I haven't done shop fronts yet, but they are sections for transport design, the Airedale plan to which Bingley is part within.
You can't, as I say,
There are a number of other subsections and local guidance which shopfront is a good one to use, and you know, I think we need to start pulling those out. Yeah,
Green belt would be
green belt. Yeah.
it covers everything, doesn't it, actually? So, okay. Thank you everybody for that discussion. Moving on, 21, 22, 100 consideration plan applications. Number 1, 22/01654, 10 Larkvale, Gilstead. I asked Steve to look at this as Rosie's not here.
Yeah, I didn't have any issue with that. There's already a rear conservatory. They want to knock it down and put a single story extension and change the internal alterations and new site order to get to it.
So are you proposing?
I would propose we accept that. This doesn't seem to work, Dale. It's a feature. I was looking at that when we were talking about the. So I can click on that to the cows come home and it goes off to try and load it, then it defaults.
Okay. We have a proposal for that. I'll second that. All those in favour? Yeah.
It might be.
Thank you.
If I can just, it's going on to Explorer, I think, by the looks of it. If you can default it to go to Chrome, that's usually better. Just. But I mean.
And number 2.
I think it's Edge rather than Explorer, so it shouldn't
number
be.
Number 2, 22/01660.
Wants to move on.
7 Park Top Cottages, Otley Road, Elwick. David, please.
Right. This is on Otley Road. It's a row of cottages set back on the left, not so far from the roundabout, and there's 2 or 3 properties in between my place. It's actually number 7 is the back of the row of terraces. So from the roadside you wouldn't really see, but actually when you look at the extension, it is huge. It has previously been refused, and I can see very little difference between the refused application and the current application. So I would honestly be minded to refuse again, using the reasons for refusal: previous excessive scale, mismatched materials, failed to retain the character of the original dwellings, failing to follow guidance in the council's adopted household supplementary. Basically, the extension is not informed by a good understanding of the site area, its context, and would substantially and adversely affect the amenity contracted course strategy policies SC9, DS1 and DS3.
So you're approving that also?
No, refusing.
I mean, you're refusing all those grounds. I think, David, perhaps if you could forward that bit to Nicola.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, that'd be great.
Please.
Yeah.
I would second that. I had a significant issue with that building. It was it's a tiny cottagey place, and it's.
They're all quite.
I couldn't
nice,
even see how
aren't
you
they? Nice little
accessed it
cottages.
on
There's a ginnel between.
Yeah, ginnel, that's right.
Are you seconding that, Steve?
I am seconding it.
I just had a couple of questions. So, of the row of cottages, which one is it? Is it going from your house into Eldwick?
My house
first
is
block?
behind number 1. So basically it was a row of back-to-backs.
Right, okay.
So there's a couple of little ginnels go through, and this is one of the rear cottages, and the extension is
Okay.
huge. Yeah.
Do we need? I don't think we've
We need
voted,
to
have
vote,
we?
though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we,
On the vote.
I was
thought we
just trying to
voted.
make this
Did we
do
vote?
something, it just
Yes, we
didn't
did vote, yeah.
Okay.
Are we? Yeah.
number 3, 22/01687, 1 Swan Avenue. David, did you look at 1 Swan Avenue? No, you
No, that's
didn't.
in Gilstead.
Has anybody looked at 1 Swan Avenue?
I looked at it because I look at all of them.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk to it if you would like
Yeah.
me to.
Steve,
Is it
please.
single story?
Yeah, 1 Swan Avenue is a big detached space at the gateway of the lower end of Swan Avenue. So it's not the Acorns end and the Traders Treat or Chelsea Treats. It's the other end. So it's lower than the middle school or primary school, whatever it is now. So opposite Agincourt. And this conservatory is again around the back of the house, so you wouldn't see it from the road. The fence separates it from Warren Lane, and it's a sunroom which is pretty much the same size as the conservatory, and associated external works, so they mean patio and seating area and things like that. So I would say, yeah.
I think it's like the style of people getting rid of conservatories and making it into a proper
more habitable
room.
Yeah. I'll second Steve's.
Yeah, I'll say
Steve's approving, it's seconded by David. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Number 4, 22/01470 Main Street, Bingley. Lewis, change of use.
So I'm torn on this. So it's the old bank. I think it's Santander on the corner between Ferncliff and Main Street, and they're going to. Well, they've applied to change the use to a pizza takeaway. So I think a fair question is, does Bingley not already have enough takeaways? I think that's a fair question. I personally changed my view slightly because I quite like the pizza chain that's doing it, which is very selfish and a little bit silly, but I did. And there's also a conversation to be had about limitations of choice. So I don't think I've got too much of an issue with it. The layout of it means that there won't be anywhere to eat in and sit down and dine, similar to Domino's in that regard, in that there'd be a waiting area, and there's from my amateur eye that looks to be sufficient sort of drainage and extraction.
David?
Yeah, after a knock on the head, I thought it was the Yorkshire Building Society
I thought so too.
property, but I can agree to disagree on that because I've been seeing double.
It's the Santander.
That's fine. Pizza takeaway, I don't have an issue with. Oversupply, not really a planning issue. I think the only one that you could consider is its proximity to schools. However, this is in a busy shopping centre, in a busy town centre, so I personally don't have an issue with it.
Rachel?
I'd rather the site was used by something, and
Yeah.
I mean it's a pizza takeaway. It's not something seedy, is it?
Well, this is true.
And it's a
Lewis,
business. It's going to.
Yeah.
I had a quick look at this on the map, and obviously I got it wrong if it really is Santander, because I did think it was Yorkshire Building Society. I noticed there's no objection from Health and Wellbeing from Bradford, but if every single one down the street was a takeaway, there wouldn't be any objection from Health and Wellbeing. So I'm a bit torn on it, and I suggest that we make no comment actually.
I have no issues with it at all. I think bringing a building into use.
Well, Louis says you've looked at it. What do you
I was going to advocate approving it.
You're going to approve it, and David seconding, and all those in favour of approving it. And
I'll abstain on it.
Abstain.
Yeah.
Number 5. 22/01758 29 Rylands Avenue, Gilstead. Steve?
Yeah, again, this is a traditional rear and side extension. I'm afraid we can try and pull it up if people want to see it, but they say the internet here struggles. But it's not too big because it's single story down the sides, a wraparound. And they've part and parcel of that is to put the rear dormers in the loft conversion. So from the front of the house, you struggle to see it. From the back of the house, you would see it, but it's a single story. The only other thing you've got is the rear dormers looking down, but I say that's sort of traditional for houses around here on that road. So I've had no issues with it at all.
Does it overlook anybody? Does it
no
overlooking?
You can't tell really. It's going to overlook someone because you're higher up and you're looking out.
Yeah.
But whether or not that's an issue for secrecy or privacy, I don't think so.
No.
Because dormer windows are the traditional thing to do, aren't they? So
Yeah.
Are you proposing approval then, Steve?
I would have. I couldn't see anything wrong with
Do
it.
we have a second to David? All in favour, please show. Yeah, that's everybody. Thank you. Number 6. 22/01785 9 Healy Avenue, Bingley. Lewis.
This is the one that I referred to earlier. I have looked at this before. The plans, I'm not sure how significantly they've changed, if I'm honest. So this is a house that is elevated in relation to the houses to its left as you look at the frontage of it, and the neighbour that I happen to speak with is the most immediate neighbour to that side, if that makes sense. So would be most directly impacted in terms of privacy and people overlooking into the garden with the nature of this quite significant extension. He had no issue. No issue. Although Councillor Williams would say that shouldn't sway me, I think it's important to note he didn't have an issue. I think it should be approved. I don't see any obvious issues.
Approval.
Yeah.
And do we have a second for that, please? David, all those in favour, please show. That's everybody. Thank you. Number 7, 22/01808, 38 Rand's Avenue, Gilstead. I asked Steve to have a quick look at this.
Again, you can see from the description it's a conservatory coming down and a single-storey re-extension going up to replace it. So, couldn't see any issues with it at all. Approve.
Approve. A second for that, please. All in favour? Thank you. Number 8, 22/01489, Higher Heights Farm, Heights Lane, Elwick. David.
Right, thank you. This is a collection of ramshackled sheds. It does say stables, but from Google Earth, they just look like sheds to me. To be demolished, and 5 holiday homes to be placed upon the site. Bearing in mind this is sat in the green belt.
5, did you say?
No, I think it's one 5-bedroom house.
No, that was the one next door.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you actually look on the
It's a
plan,
tourist accommodation.
yeah, if you actually look on the thing, there's a group of properties around that site. The idea, I think, is tourist accommodation, holiday let business. It's in the green belt. If they were just developing the ramshackled old stables, you might stretch that being ground field, but actually it's taking a fair bit of the site up. Incidentally, next door is Valley View Stables, where recently a house in the same bit of green belt next to some stables was refused. I'm not convinced that once built they would stop as holiday homes. There's nothing to make them stop as holiday homes. It is in Greenbelt. I can't in the documentation, and it's quite a lengthy document.
Just for clarification, because you know I'm a bit of a pedant. If I'm looking at the right one here, which says demolition of the existing stables and associated outbuildings and the construction of a new building which is to be utilised as tourist accommodation. A new building.
Well, when you actually look at the plan, there's sort of 5.
I'm firing that up, but this thing's struggling. But whether we can look at it on an iPhone or iPad or something or other.
Do you want to use my laptop, Steve?
No, don't fire up your laptop. Is this or
I think it might be one big house.
I think it's one big house. That's what I was saying earlier. I think it is one big house.
That's what I thought when I had a quick
You mean
look at the
rather than being
plans.
5, it's going to be 1?
No, it's 1. It never was 5. I think it's 1 5-bedroom house.
I'm just wondering, like, what's the market for a tourist?
Again, I don't think that's a planning issue.
I know, but like,
If someone wants to open something selling pink widgets, that's it. Yeah, this is hard standing and it's 1 5-bedroom house.
there's different bedrooms.
Didn't have an issue with it.
Lewis?
Yep.
Oh, maybe with a knock on the head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How long's that reasoning going to go?
So,
Well, whatever. I'm
so what then, David?
I'm sorry to cut across you like
no, that's fine. Is that if I've made a genuine mistake on that's fine. I'll hold my hands up on that.
Well, you might be right that a similar one has been rejected.
Yes, yeah. But I'm still of the opinion that a 5-bedroomed house will become a permanent habitation rather than holiday home. And I look at the principle that next door at Valley View Farm, they refused them large detached house. So I'd be minded to refuse on the same reason for Valley View, size, scale, character, landscape, cinder green belts, and I cannot see any extenuating circumstances within the document that says there's a need for a house.
Right.
It isn't like it's a farmer's cottage or anything like that.
Can I just ask a question? So why would anyone say it's for tourist accommodation rather than say it's a house?
Perhaps they think we might be softer on a tourist application than a permanent house application.
Yeah.
It is a house. There's no doubt about it.
I mean, rather than somebody going to live there, rather
Is there
than.
a separate class, David? Do we know?
I'm just wondering what the motivation behind that is. Is it easier to get planning permission for a tourist accommodation, or
Potentially, I would have. They might be using that as a ploy, but there's nothing then to say, well, oh dear, my mum and dad moved in and they're living there permanently and they've now got a very expensive.
I would see it as a permanent house.
Yeah.
I had a look at it. I was fascinated to discover we got 2 species of bats within 1 kilometre.
there's a bat survey.
There's a bat survey, yeah.
There was a bat survey because one of the buildings is stone and it's got entrances that bats could use, but it's a low likelihood apparently, and that's their problem as well to sort out, because they'll have to have a bat chap sitting there all night and with an echolocator and all the rest of it, and that'll cost a mint of money.
Well, David
replacing scruffy outbuildings with a house, which does seem to be inappropriate materials. It's stone and timber.
Yeah.
I think it's an improvement actually on probably what's there at the moment.
Well, David is recommending refusal.
Yeah,
that's it then.
Yeah, but it's not. This is timber. It's not. It's
David is recommending refusal. Mr. Fenton, as a member of the public, you had your hand
What's
up.
the access like?
So
Out onto Heights Lane.
yeah, the angle of that exit doesn't look like it's going to be a kind way to get onto the main road, looking at it from that way. But if it's only one additional house, okay. Well, if it's one additional house and it's used, that's probably less of a problem than if it's holiday lets.
That access is there for horse boxes already.
Yeah,
for
that's true.
people bringing their horses to the stables.
But presumably the people with the horses know the road, know the speed that people travel, whereas if you Joe Blogs coming from, I don't know where, then you might not know that. That's a good question, though.
So David has recommended refusal on the grounds that is. Did you get all the?
Well, there's another one I've found as well. The site next door was also refused on. It's within 2.5 kilometres of the South Pennine Moors Special Protected Area for Conservation, Zone B buffer, and there's an encroachment onto and beyond the existing building curtilages. So that is policy SCH. I'm just looking at the principle. Next door, the refused one 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Well, can we
I
let
can't see
Bradford do the
Give
same?
me no comment.
Well,
Make no comment. I can go no comment.
Am I not right in thinking that this field here has got planning application for 43?
No, that's a lot further. That's a lot
Close,
further
but
down.
not
Yeah.
100 metres.
The site next door had an application in for a large detached house next to their stables. That has been refused, and those are the reasons I've just given for the one literally next door being refused. And I can't see that there's any great difference
Sorry, Chair.
Can I
I
ask?
will second.
Can I ask if you know what this is? Is that land?
Is that a house?
No, that's
That's
the
a
house.
chimney. Does that look like a chimney?
Well,
that top
is
bit.
it might be an obelisk. I'm saying, is that land? Is in other words, is this high ground?
That's how I read it.
Higher heights lane. Is
Yeah.
that high? So it is not the house itself nestling under a lee of a field.
Well, if you actually, I've got the
Councillor Fenton's nodding. I think I might be onto something. I don't think you're going to see it at all. The issue of 5 people in Volvos turning up to have a holiday there is no issue at all for me. Welcome. They can go to Papa Joe's. That would just agree.
Well, we have.
I think it's the principle that they've just refused one next door.
Yeah.
Well, we have
If
on
we
the
have to
table.
go to no comment, I'm quite happy to no comment, but I certainly won't be voting for an approval.
Yeah,
We have on the table then, David has put forward a refusal on the grounds of, and I will second that. All those in favour?
Seconding refusal.
Yes, seconding
Right,
refusal.
okay.
All those in favour, please show. 3 of us. Abstentions? Well, against? 3.
Casting votes, Chair.
Well, we go with the refusal.
Okay.
And here's 150 vote.
That's the.
if it's
Great.
holiday, could give them a community gift card.
Number 9, 22/01876, 16 Thornfield Mews, Bicklethwaite. Rachel.
Yeah, it's a single story extension. It's just extending. What they've done is their dining room and kitchen at the rear of the property, and they want to just extend it and make it open plan dining kitchen. It doesn't overlook anyone. There are no comments either way. Not that we know what they are. And all the consultees are fine with it, and they don't care. So I would say approve.
Rachel's recommending approval. Do we have a second for that, please? Lewis, all in favour? Go. And finally, number 10, 22/01451, 11 Bracken Park, Gilstead. Finally, Mr. Williams.
This one is a resubmission. If you remember
Yes,
it
is a resubmission.
we had it in front of us a month, maybe 2 months ago. I'm firing it up, and it was rejected on the grounds of trees. The comments from the rejecting officer says that Bracken Park was a parkland before, and these trees that are on the back of this property are part of the visual street scene reserved as TPOs by the development, by Bradford at the time the development went forward. So Bracken Park went into the trees basically. But the issue for this particular property is the trees are not in his property, they're in the property behind, so they're overhanging. So the issue for the planning authority was that there was no information in the planning submission for whether this alteration of the garage was going to require different foundations, what the foundations are, whether they were going to be into the root structures of the trees, given the fact that they're in the next door neighbours, whether the extension being double storey was going to get into the crown of the trees. So effectively the property owner's gone back to his RB culturalist and updated the tree plan that's in there. So on this planning application is the original one dated September 2021 and one that's dated 2022, which is the RB culturalist has come back and visited again, taken these surveys, put in root protection plans in place, construction plans to say that nothing can go anywhere near it. You can't put a digger over this area because you might impact on the root structure. But they've gone further than this. They've actually looked at the trees themselves and recommended for them for taking them out, because the arboriculturist is saying that these trees are now dead. So the Bradford are trying to protect trees which are effectively dead. He's actually saying 2 more of them will be dead within 2 years. So you ought to look at them every year as an annual tree survey, which is interesting because they're not in this guy's garden. So he's actually saying to Bradford, these trees over there you've got a problem with, be that as it may, it's got nothing to do with this particular thing. So I would recommend approval. So I think the guy's now going up above and beyond to give Bagford, to actually cater for their concerns. Let's put it that way. So I think
Steve
he's
is
allayed
recommending
that.
approval. Do we have a seconder to that, please?
Second that.
Dale?
Yeah.
All in favour? Brilliant, thank you.
One more time, Steve. What was the tree expert they got
No,
called?
no, you're not going to get me with that. It's a hell of a
Tree
lot of work.
surgeon.
Tree surgeon.
21, 22, 101 updates. Update on Green Hill, Nicola.
No, nothing,
Millfield Farm,
nothing,
Air Valley Incinerator.
nothing.
That, gentlemen and ladies, is the last meeting of this planning committee for this year, so thank you all for the past year. The next meeting is on Tuesday the 14th of June, 6:30 here, with a new planning committee.
We'll be on it.
Are you deeming this meeting closed, Chair?
Yes, sorry, it's
Then I'm
so
going
closed.
to say goodnight to you two.